This is Dago from Team 2. I'm going to be kicking off this video. Just as a refresher, our project was a music queue. There's two big portions of this project, which one's going to be the user login, user validation, and then the performer side. And my portion is the user side. So if we look, we have it set up with some controllers and a model. Here's our controller. Right now we're using a private database. That's going to be switched out next week, but we're just using this for testing purposes right now. And then if you go here to user, basically all we have is just the username and the hash pass, which is the password. So if you look at, we're working on the login.js. If you look at this, I have a little form set up. It's on our site. I'll have to just go. Here, you can see it. There's no functionality to it right now. That's something I'll have to get working on. As you can see, it's just going to take the username and password, and then we'll have a submit button. We're going to have to check for spaces and password and a couple other things in the username. For testing, Swagger. So if we go here, I'm using a post method to update and send data to the database. Just go here to try it out. Like we saw earlier, we have some predefined users here. So if you just do this one, something random, say, execute this, it's going to get a bad request because it's not in there. But if we change it to something that we do have, you can see that it's a little hiccup. But if I test the username and password that we have already set up or already registered, and we go ahead and execute that, you can see that the request is successful. We get the ID number, and then it just returns the username and password. That's about it. So I'm going to pass it off to Sean.
All right. Thank you, Dago. So for my portion of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about the application's testing and the database operations as they relate back to my portion of the application, which concerns the administrative dashboard. So to start about that, we have to talk about the performer entity. So let's take a look at that. And let me also just move off of there, right there, so it's a little bit easier for us to focus. So for the performer entity, we have some basic data points that include their name, song, showtime, and likes. And it also includes the ID. So we're using this information to sort and then display information on the associated views that the application has to offer. As for the actual database operations, we can view those by going over to the performer controller. And let me minimize that so we can see it just a little bit better. And the operations that concern my portion are going to be the reverse HTTP GET method. And all this does is it just sends a reverse listing of the performer objects inside of the database out to the caller of the request. And this lets us see the current queue. That way we're not actually having to page through old aging performers. We can actually see the most current ones up to date. So the other operations that I have to make use of are the create route, which is used to do just as it sounds. We can create and add new performers to the queue using that. And then we have put performer. This is used to update existing performers. For instance, let's say Billy Joel wants to change one of his songs. We can do it from right there. And lastly, I have the delete performer route, which is used to delete performers by their IDs. So this all is used within the administrative dashboard page, which we can see right here on the home route. Note that you will, assuming you have the privileges to do so, you will have to log in using Dago's login page to get to this page. And then from here, it will display a listing of the actual users. So here we have a bunch of test data. We have the times that these test performers are going to be going. And then we also have their names, the song names, and the number of likes that they have received. Where likes are updated, that's going to be Chris's page, and that's going to be a publicly viewable page where just standard bystanders and spectators can all contribute to someone's likes or dislikes as the performer is on and live. From there, we're going to have a couple of forms here that are associated with those create, update, and delete routes. Delete itself is just going to be just a button, but the create button and the update buttons will lead to their own individual forms. And the actual API operations, I will show you our testing procedures for those here and the Swagger doc. So for the reverse listing, we can do a try it out and see what we have available. As we were expecting, we got a reverse listing of the current queue, starting with the most recently inserted performer. Next up, we have the actual update. So let's grab some information about that performer. So let's use our guy Rafe as an example, right? So let's scroll down here to put, and we have to add his information right there. So we don't need his ID for this operation. In order to show that is a little bit less, we could use a DTO, but for the purpose of testing, we've just been removing that ID field, and then we'll actually move that ID data up here to up there. And then if we execute, we'll see that this went all right. And I didn't really do anything here, so actually let's go back and change Rafe's name to Ron. So execute. All right. Now if I go back here, we'll see that Ron is now a part of our participant system. So let's also use Ron as our example for deletion. So I'm going to scroll down here to our delete route, and let's put number 2 in there and swap that out with 1. So let's execute that. It's going to tell us that everything went okay. And now if we scroll back up here and execute, we'll see that Ron now no longer exists in our system. All right, with that being said, I'm now going to pass it on over to Chris.
Thanks, Don. So for my portion of the project, I handle some of the logic for the performer controller, expanding on some of the additional points to our application, such as our current state of the queue, so who's currently performing, and then our ability for our users to like and dislike the song of the performer. As you can see, our current method returns the most recent performer logged into our database. We've also implemented 2 patch methods to handle the likes and dislike portion of our application. As you would expect, both methods respond to an event from the user by adding or subtracting 1 like from their existing likes. As Dago and Sean mentioned, we have decided to conduct our testing via the Swagger interface. So if we can navigate over there, you'll see that there is a current method which doesn't really require anything. It executes, and on execution to display our performer that is currently performing. And then if we can go over to our increment method, one of our patch methods, and the same goes for our other patch. All it requires an ID, and say we have the number 5. So we may have someone who likes the song GoFundMe.com. Fun fact, it's my favorite song. We may have someone else who's not really a fan of the song, so we have a method that we've implemented to display that they dislike the song, which would subtract 1 from their existing likes, provided the ID of the performer.